Good morning. Today I want to talk about moral arguments, making a moral argument and contrasting that, and in particular, focusing on false moral arguments. And when looking at everything going on in the world today, things are often feeling a little crazy. Lots of countries, not just United States, are struggling with things and ideas, and we should all be more enlightened than we ever have. We should all be more civilized than we ever have in all of history. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. So in some regards, I think that we all think, or a lot of people have an idea, and it makes sense initially that that we've got the general right ideas, that we've got the general correct tools with which to work from as we go about our lives, and we're trying to make them better. We live in an imperfect world with imperfect people, and how that plays out is often problematic and with a lot of disagreements. And a lot of things end up getting into the scenario where this is partly why I think power is, and I'll come back to the moral argument in just a minute, but power becomes such an issue for people, and especially for people who have or hold the poorer arguments, the ones that are lacking in something, in some form or fashion. People that want to push an idea or an ideology, or create a new law, or create some new legislation to force something, because see, people are just not always so agreeable, but there's people that think, it's kind of like we're all born as, we come into the world as babies and become toddlers soon enough, and we fully all get the idea of the whole idea of no, I want my way, I want what I want. And I'm not trying to belittle here, but in a sense, isn't the whole struggle of life us battling up against the bigger things as they come along? And we learn early enough, hopefully, that it's not polite to throw fits. It's not good to dig in your heels and make a fool of yourself or do all manner of different things. But really, you kind of can't help but see people resort back to it in a form of that as adults, adult versions of that. And that sounds awful, and it kind of is. So it's good to talk about these things. It's what in part has got my attention in trying to make sense of the craziness I'm observing in a lot of aspects of life across the board. And especially when I see, I feel and sense a sense of regression of sorts. Like we're regressing as a society sometimes. And it's not safe to assume that, we've been there, done that we don't need to revisit things. And so I wanted to talk about this idea of a false moral argument as opposed to just a good moral argument. Now, go to the movies, go to history, go to the news. We're nonstop, in essence, seeing factual things play out where there's, in essence, a moral argument put out there. Someone did something wrong, someone hurt somebody, and it appeals to your sense of justice or morality that, oh my gosh, we've got to get on this and get this person and find them. And you can't just go around and hurting little kids like that, or you can't go around hurting people and burning things down, or whatever the crime is, or whatever. But on a lesser obvious scale, we have people disagreeing on things, like I said, in politics, also in the area of religion and worldviews, views of the world, of our universe, things that we all have within our mindsets and our psyche and our consciousness, because we're making sense of the world and through a lens of sorts. So, that said, I think that making a false moral argument is a tactic or a fallacy of sorts. And that's going to be something I'm going to focus on going here on different forms of those. And I think it hurts us if we don't acknowledge these things. What you're left with is frustration and people getting away with things that they shouldn't be getting away with, in terms of like ideas. For instance, you look at, well, let me just jump here real quick. As far as a moral argument, often what's involved with that is, you've heard the term a false dichotomy or a false choice. People utilize this, and as I'm paying attention more and more than ever, on the news, in books, on radio shows, you name it, we see these false dichotomies being presented, and kind of like with a lifting of the hands up in the air, like, so, you gotta, this is what it is. And I just wanted to talk about the different responses to moral arguments, and then like who makes them and stuff. A lot of people, a lot of the general public, could be ignorant of somebody making a immoral, well, let me back up, a false moral argument, using a false dichotomy, propping up a false choice as if that's reflective of reality. But it's not. So what ends up happening is people tend to want to get people on their side. And that's part of the beauty to a person who holds bad ideas or a lesser idea than another idea. They at some point are going to have to appeal to tactics. Otherwise, their ideas just kind of fail. They're just fails. They fall down. They fall apart. If you're going to try to convince regularly or normally moral, thinking, rational, reasonable people, logical people, of your false view, you're going to have to get very, very tricky with things. And at the risk of sounding like I know when people are doing that, I admit to you, I do not know. But you can start to kind of pay attention and kind of try to ascertain what could be going on sometimes. And so we've got levels of people making false moral arguments. You've got people in history that make and present an ideology, and they know this is what's so interesting. This is where it gets really interesting. People want something that isn't right. Sometimes it's outright immoral. Sometimes it's wanting a view that just isn't the best view. It's not good for them or for others. And inherent within the view, and this is not because of anything anybody says or asserts, but literally every view has within it elements of truths. Most every view. I'm speaking of ideas. It's a good idea. It's a bad idea. Maybe it's not really one of either. But often, I'm concerned the most at the moment with the ones that are bad, because we hurt ourselves. We don't just hurt ourselves. If here's the thought: if only our bad ideas only hurt ourselves, that would at least be more fair. Unfortunate still, but that would at least be more fair. Why must we spread our bad ideas? And in fairness to some people, I don't think they realize they do it. Maybe that's going to be one group I'll talk about in a minute here. The group that they're just maybe a little bit ignorant of it. Maybe they're not too smart, or they just don't care, or they're just not thinking, or life is such that they just cannot dedicate much thinking to these sorts of things, and what could be going on. But I wanted to encourage that we all do think about these things, because why it helps is kind of like a diagnosis of sorts of a problem. If you've ever been listening to somebody and they make a point and you know it's just not quite right, but you can't quite pin why. Number one thing to do there, I think, is to say, could my view be wrong? Could I possibly be wrong? Number two idea is, so say that this also happens, I'm jumping around a bit there. The worst forms of this are when people are actually making a lot of great points. It's like point 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all fair, logical, reasonable, moral choices or ideas or premises of sorts. You lay all those out. Those all sound great. And then what happens often is you kind of slip, they will slip in a not so great one and then pick right up again with, like, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are good points. 6 is a horrible, not a great point at all. Maybe even just muttered real quickly, and so you almost don't even know it. And then, but points 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all great points again. And you think, wow, they have a seamless argument. Wow, they're impressive, and that's pretty good stuff there. I can't argue with that. And so what you have sometimes are, that person is not good to do that. And I'm not saying that everybody does this that is beholding bad arguments, that are in ownership of a bad idea or argument. I think sometimes what people do is we have picked a side prematurely. This is a big problem, and that can be something to talk about later too, but side taking. Simple side taking. Who doesn't want their side to win? Or a team. Who doesn't want their team to win? We align ourselves with a side. Now, both of the sides do not have to have seamless, perfect views, but one of the sides can have a great view. A better, more logically following idea that follows some good premises. Like the da-da-da-da-da, and therefore fill in the blank. Those people that have those ideas sometimes still don't have 100% perfect ideas, and that's okay for it to still be better ideas than the other. You just want to analyze this. And this is often what I think we're supposed to be doing, like in our branches of government, the going back and forth, the hey, going, analyzing things. And again, when the bad ideas don't get by somebody who's smarter and brighter and whatever, this is where the appeal of power comes into play. Because you just get so frustrated that the poor views cannot be passed off as good enough to be allowed in a normally moral, loving, reasonable society or group of societies. Therefore, powers they have to kind of like sit back, get a little more thoughtful, think a little more deeply, and think, we have to rethink things. We have to because this is not working. Why are we not getting anywhere? Well, often the reason you're not getting anywhere is you are pretending that you have a moral argument and you actually don't. And this is tough to countenance, that idea. It's very tough to consider, dang it, am I doing that too? Could I be doing that thing? So you want to be gentle with yourself and with others and try to share fairly, because again, I don't think everybody's coming from this like crazy smart, heavy IQ, born out of been a member of a Mensa group, I don't know, that is also maybe some pathological, sociopathic, some personality disorder level of scariness going on. If you've got a combination of brilliant genius, but also mixed with a sense of a lack of a morality, that's where it gets scary. But these people will use moral arguments. That's going to be very rare. You find a person like that, next to never. But I'm just talking about, like, in history, you probably could think of somebody who has done this, and they tried to do a culmination or a combination of things with power, money, being able to reach a crowd or indoctrinate from a young age. You see, people who know they have bad ideas have to go about pushing their agendas or ideas through as good in another way, because the human beings are imbued, so to speak, with a sense of morality. We can't help but want to get on board with what's moral and fight what is not moral and what would hurt us. This is normal. This is normal from no matter what your view is. If you're an atheist, if you're if you're a theist, I don't even care. To survive in this world, you've got to apprehend, be the holder of good ideas. I think it's a trick to be played a fool by people who think they're so clever and getting you to believe they're bad ideas. Just like, don't do it. And I think that it hurts us. It hurts all of us. So we've taken a side, or say we don't take a side per se. You say, oh, I don't try not to do that. Well, you might have fans. You might be a fan of somebody. You might be, I don't want to say a follower, but like in essence, you do follow people on media platforms. You follow people by buying their books, going to their speeches, discussions, talk shows. We tend to listen to people that tend to give us what we want to hear sometimes. Maybe perhaps it is time to listen to the others that don't give us a sense of comfy, cozy, pats on the back, ear tickling ideas that make us feel better about ourselves and our world. Because here's why. Right now, so what is this, the 10th of January 2019? This whole thing's falling apart. People are taking advantage of you. I can almost guarantee it. There's talking heads out there that are trying to take advantage of you mentally. I mean, in terms of passing off to you a bad idea as good. Now, before you think, oh yeah, well, that's bad, or that people shouldn't do that. Could it be happening to you? Even you. Say you have a doctorate. We already know that there's people who are absolutely brilliant people. They have multiple levels of degrees and whatnot that can make absolutely critical errors in their thinking and judgments. So there's that. But I'm just saying, don't be used by someone else, maybe because you have a voice and you have a platform. You have all these things to reach a greater group of people that will buy bad ideas as good ideas. You could be being used too with some form of flattery, with some form of compensation, or with some form of fear of punishment. If you don't do this thing, there's subtle suggestions, and it's like, oh my goodness. So it just feels like things are ramping up a bit. And well, that's kind of a strong way to put it, but I'm serious because I've talked about this, or I meant to in a different video, but it's kind of like there's ideas and ideologies are fault lines in the world right now. And the fault lines are fine. We know they exist in the Earth's crust. We know that on the land masses and under the oceans, and we know that fault lines exist, and that's fine. When it's not fine is when they start to really rub up against each other and build up tension. This is happening in the philosophical world. This is happening in the world where ideas are flowing back and forth. And it matters very much because we can get caught up in the day-to-day. We got to go to work. We got to get a paycheck. We got to pay our bills. We want to, feed our families and clothe ourselves and put roofs over our heads. And you don't really have time to think about this stuff, really. But the thing is, in the meantime, writers are coming to a town near you. I mean, I kind of joking there. Totally joking, actually. But where I live, we've had some riots in recent history. Look at Portland, Oregon. You could be walking down the street one day and get caught up in something. Holy cow. And you've got police on the sidelines, it's just is this a weird time or what? The world's getting a little bit turned upside down. So I'm just saying we need to back it up and get into this arena of discussing things, because this is where the answers lie. If you could be shown or convinced how you're being deceived, would you not want to know? And that leads us to another type of person. People might just love somebody, they might like somebody. So it could be a family member, it could be a leader of a religious sect or cult, it could be a leader of a non-religious type of set of beliefs, it could be a politician, you name it. It could be an author that you love, a fictional. The thing is, oh, I'm losing my thought there, shoot. But what my point basically is, there's people that are being taken advantage of because they just like somebody else, or they're just, they admire them for whatever reason. There is something that person has said or done that strikes a chord within them, that they want to listen to more of what that person has to say, because it strikes a chord and rings true. So when that person takes a side, this is where we're at in society right now, in our families, at holidays, at get-togethers and birthday parties and whatever. It's getting difficult. People that used to really get along are starting to really be at diametrically opposing views that are so at odds. People's feelings are getting literally involved. We don't just have frustration or disagreement. We're like getting into the hate and rage categories. This is a problem meant to get our attention. So that's why I'm doing any of these kinds of videos, like this one I'm doing right now, talking about moral arguments. Now, I love the movies. I love to go to the movies, and I love all kinds of movies. And I love to read books. I love history. History and the arts and things are replete with morality-based scenarios playing out. We love the idea of getting the bad guy, stopping the evil, right? Because I think that's reflective. Now, granted, I'm talking about just the arts right there, but isn't it interesting that that's what appeals to us? And to the false moral arguments, when people do this, they're tricking you into agreeing with something else they want to say that doesn't get to hold merit on its own. They're tricking you. Well, they're not maybe even purposely trying to trick you. They're being maybe ignorant of it. And then that's embarrassing. Now, there's people who are aware of these things, and if you presented them with a headline, say, a headline that came out, say, Sunday, a couple days ago, and people were doing this, falsely putting out moral ideas, as it turns out. It's going to appeal to people who aren't that smart. Let's be honest. And I feel like that begins to make it almost even more immoral to do. Taking advantage of weak people, or just ignorant, not even stupid. They're not stupid. But again, they're just trying to live life and do their thing. And they're getting mad and frustrated, or people are kind of accusing them for views they have that, we've never seen it like this. I think it's wrong to take advantage of people who are already following you, who like you. So watch out. Keep an eye out for people trying to prop up people who are going to get people to like them for other reasons. Do you see how strange this all begins to be? This is like a storm of sorts. Here I go referring to nature again, like fault lines and storms. I get so frustrated. I think it's absolutely maddening that as humans we do this. That when we have a bad idea and it can be shown to be bad with rationality, logic, reason, morality. Why do we as humans, and this goes back to my little toddler point, that kids that kick and scream, or that want to, but are trained carefully by their parents to not do that. Why don't we ditch the bad ideas for the good? We're forgetting why we're leaving out that option. It's so stupid of us. It's like we're spiraling we're meant as a collective mindset. We're spiraling as a society. And we really, really need to stop it. You know what's brave and moral? To ditch your crappy idea. Sorry to put it like that. Ditch the idea that is not serving you, and that you have maybe been trying to pass off to others, and very frustrated along that process. And you get more frustrated with your opponent's views, which is ironic, isn't it? The view that is actually correct, you may not side with, but that could be the more accurate and reflective of reality view that there is. Are you following me? Because this is not a world where we get what we want for that reason. Some things, sure. But in general, reality doesn't work like that. We don't get to just have what we want for that reason. We don't get to prefer something and have that be true for that reason. No, it has to. Sorry, I get a little driven up about that because, or worked up, whatever you want to term that. Because we hurt ourselves and others all the time through this mental method of doing things. So I just wanted to respond to that observance and the false dichotomy, the false choice. Look for this. If you are going to put out there a false argument, it's a false moral argument, rather. You are immoral to do that. If you're ignorant, you can learn of it and then you can stop it then too. But you can't keep using it just because it works, unless you're the kind of person that will do that, and then that just is a real bummer for people and those around you. And if that's what you choose to be, see, here's where the real crux is, in part, where the rubber meets the road. If you do things that get your points across and views across, what you really want in the world, and you do it for any kind of nefarious, too strong of a word, but in essence that, for any kind of game playing that gets it done, then that makes you a person that would do that. You get what comes with that. It's not for free. So just to encourage people to really think about that. It sounds like I'm doing some shame inducing here. I kind of am. If we're talking about morality, let's talk about it. Let's actually talk about real morality. So I didn't make people make immoral arguments. They did that. And it feeds itself. It's a self-feeding circle of craziness, because when you are a holder of poorer views than other views, if you hold within your mind, if you esteem an idea that actually doesn't really work, so you're kind of playing that preference and want game with your own ideas and beliefs, guess what? You will naturally get frustrated with yourself, but you will not accept that as what is happening. Most likely, people don't tend to do that. They're not that honest with themselves. So what will happen is you will still feel the feelings, though, that come with it, because none of this is free. None of it is. You will be feeding something pretty dark to continue to engage in this, because you get frustrated and you feel it, And guess what you pin that on? The people that hold the views that are opposite, or people that hold views that are actually workable, tenable views that are the better. So again, this I think is meant to lead us toward truth, toward reality, toward logic and reason. And if we are in a bad place mentally and philosophically in our mindsets, how different is that from going to a doctor when you've got an ailment and you realize this needs attention? It's like this is hurting me. This is awful. I need to go get this checked out. The way to kind of heal this is to apply correct views. And if things have gotten pretty bad, sometimes applying what is needed is painful for us to acknowledge it. But you don't get to force through a bad idea as good and have it be good because you were able to trick people into doing that. So that's basically my point. And I took it kind of more into it in intense form there, so sorry about that. I just find it sad. I feel really sad for people who are not that bright, who are not the highest IQs, and that's not putting them down. It's acknowledging what's in our environment, and that could be me too. That could be me. Whatever. Again, this is why I can speak on this. I think I've done that to myself with like lesser things that are self-defeating in my own life. So it's kind of like, oh my gosh, it's not that different. So say I want to lose some weight, say, and it's a new year. It's a good time to be thinking about health and fitness and whatnot, right? Well, here's a problem. My clothes are fitting tighter than I would like, say. Well, what can I do with that? I can pretend, a lot of things and, fool myself. But then I also know the real answers, don't I? We already know these things are true. We play such games with ourselves as human beings. We really do, you guys. What I mean is, when it comes to, say, weight loss, a lot of times it will entertain these bad ideas, the false moral argument ideas on the one hand, but on the flip side, where we know we buck up against literal science and nature, laws of logic and whatnot, and we know we can't win, so we buckle to that, and we readjust, we recalibrate, we realign with what is. And I'm just asking that you and I and all of us, our leaders, our influencers, do the same with all ideas. Ideas, facts, and things are only true if they are facts, if they are true. They're only moral if they're actually moral. If it doesn't really matter one way or the other, then it may not, apply. But we have to be more honest with ourselves if we want to have a decent life and a decent future, because I think maybe we've been heading down this path for a while and now it's getting to critical points. So that said, that was a long time to talk about that, but I hope that makes sense. Be kinder to others. Get better ideas. Be willing to ditch the poor ideas. Be willing to countenance what might be true, but that you have somehow set up in your mind some great moral stance against, and it's going to be hurting you. If you've developed your own great moral stance against something in a false way, it feels justified and haughty, and you just can't believe all those other immoral people out there. Just consider checking yourself. To what end would you do that? For what? And for who? Who is that for? Certainly not for you. That's not looking out for yourself. That's not looking out for your best interest. And I think, dare say, and I'll end with this, when you engage in that yourself, any of us, it's actually a weak position. And guess who likes to take advantage of weak people with weak positions? Dark or evil people, people that are awful, tend to want to take advantage because they need other people to push through a bad idea. And if they see you using tactics that will hurt even yourself and others, they might want to use you to help them push their agenda too. So anyway, that said, kind of just a lot of theorizing there and just thinking out loud, so bear with me. I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for watching, if you still are, and if you care to hear about things like this or want to chat with me about it in the comments, I would so welcome it, and I hope to post more like this. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.